We'd like to welcome to the stage our featured guest today, recently elected as the 37th sheriff of the 4th largest county in the country. Please welcome Mr. Paul Penzone. Good to have you here, sir. Long time no see. I'm good. Have a seat.
Out of respect to the sheriffs, I didn't wear my gun. A peaceful man.
You are a peaceful man.
Andy set the tone. I just want to follow in his footsteps.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on being the sheriff, and wow, it's got to be awesome for you. Tell us a little bit about. You know what? I've known you for years. But by the way, our buddy Steve was going to be here today and sit in the front row and surprise you, but he got sick and could not make it. But tell us a little bit about your background in law enforcement.
Well, I was with the Phoenix Police Department for just right around 21 years. I grew up actually in New Jersey as a young man, but moved here in the late 70s and about the junior high time, and just early on knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. Spent 21 years with the Phoenix Police Department. A good portion that I worked in narcotics undercover, not only the state level, but on a federal task force. I spent some time in administration, which when you're an officer, you feel like that it's like eating your vegetables when you're a kid. But learning about budgets obviously is very important. And then I ended my career at Silent Witness, and I was there during the baseline killer and serial shooter cases. And I learned a couple things there that, not that I didn't know, but it kind of, brings you back to the place where you began, which is, you want to recognize that when you interact with folks who either have been victimized or lost loved ones to violent crime, that you need to be as convicted as you are compassionate. You don't want to be in their place, and you want to be able to have the perspective through their eyes of what they're dealing with and make sure they know that you're by their side. And the other part is about collaboration. We have a very, very big county with a lot of municipal law enforcement agencies, and you can drive 3 miles and go through 4 jurisdictions. So we need to make sure we're on the same page and that we are connected.
That's awesome. First question just came in. What is your top concern for the county?
I'd like to tell you there's one top concern, but we have 2 issues that are top of mind for me. As I said, I worked in narcotics, and the opioid epidemic right now is probably the most severe that I've seen in my career. And I was there, as I said, in narcotics during the times with crack and meth and everything else, and they're all very severe. But the reach of this current epidemic and the impact that it has long-term on families and our young adults is tremendous. And the other issue is we have about 30,000 unserved felony warrants in Maricopa County, so that's for all jurisdictions. And a small percentage of the population is responsible for the majority of the crime. And these are the folks that are running right now that have not yet been held accountable. And every day that they're out there, the probability that they are committing additional crimes is extremely high. So issues like terrorism, those other factors are absolutely top of mind. But what we can impact here on a local scale and be more aggressive about to improve the quality of life for our young adults, I think, in my opinion, are those 2 categories.
Wow, 30,000.
Yes.
Well, let's see if we can make it easier for you. If you have a warrant.
Yes.
Anybody? Once again, just me.
We have some refurbished cells we're happy to accommodate.
That's all. Speaking of, I know you had a very aggressive, what'd you want to get accomplished in your first 100 days or whatever. Tell us about that, and tell us any changes?
Oh, considerable changes. Anytime you take over an organization, what was least surprising to me but most gratifying was going through the door, and the men and women in the organization were tremendous. They had one form of leadership for a quarter of a century, and you don't know what you're stepping into, and they didn't know me. So just kind of that open arm attitude to get to know each other and to see how much talent exists in the sheriff's office. And what was important is that, from my perspective, we refocused what this office had been and put the focus more on the men and women who do the job, that truly sacrifice for our best interests on the streets, because their stories are the ones we should hear. Whether you know me and I make the top 10 or not is not important, but whether they're safe and they're doing the job so that you can be safe is. So one of the first things we focused on was the hierarchy, who truly are leaders that are selfless, that are focused on the best interest of the community first, the organization, and within the organization, their peers and their colleagues, and their subordinates, because I'm not a fan of those who say, let me tell you about myself and what I want for my career. I'm a fan of those who say, let me tell you about what I want to do on behalf of others so we can make it better for everyone. So the biggest part was changing culture, at least setting a foundation for culture. Then it was really kind of reestablishing our priorities. The oddest moment, I'll tell you, Mark, was walking into a federal courtroom and having the judge say, Melendrez versus Penzone, and inheriting 2 federal court orders, which are extremely comprehensive and very, very challenging to the office, but an additional 250 lawsuits that were all transferred in my name when I took office. So that is our issue, not mine alone, although my name is on the headline there. But it's expensive to run an effective law enforcement agency, and you want to be efficient. But anytime we're involved in elements where we have failed or made bad decisions and it's cost taxpayer dollars, it undermines our ability to keep the community safe. So that was really kind of the primary issues to deal with initially. And then it was really deciding how we can better establish an organization that is focused on the needs of those communities we serve.
Wow, that had to be a weird time to hear your name on mentioned like that.
The federal court judge says your name in that context. You know, just a little trivia though, maybe trivia, but you know, we have, 3,500 employees, cover over 9,000 square miles, and have a $360 million budget. So we have a lot going on. And within that scope, the majority of what we do is detention. You know, 70% of what this office does is detention, and the other 30% in the enforcement side is in the unincorporated areas and some under contract like Guadalupe or Fountain Hills. So we really are a detention-heavy organization that provides a law enforcement service.
Wow. You know, everybody knows or thinks they know what you guys do, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that fall under the sheriff's department that people don't even know about. Anything you'd like
Yeah,
to
no, absolutely. I mean, you know, and one of the benefits that I had when I was in high school, my mother worked in the justice courts, and I would volunteer, I don't know if I could say volunteer, maybe she made me come to work with her in the summer. And I would pretend to be a bailiff. But what I learned was the balance in our system. You know, obviously I come from an enforcement side, and public safety and being strong on issues of crime is a priority. That's very important to me. At the same time, we must have a system that's fair and just, because if we're on the other side of that, we want to know we're going to be treated fairly and with justice. So understanding the dynamic of the balance in our system, whether we look at a defense attorney, you look at a prosecutor, whomever it may be, every little cog in the wheel matters. We're responsible for all transportation, you know, as it relates to Maricopa County, for inmates to and from court, for court safety, for those of the judges and others within the courtrooms. And if you think about it, if we're dragging our feet and we don't get someone to court on time, not only have we undermined their right, but we've cost taxpayers more money because we're repeating the cycle again. Inmate care, you know, with 8,000 inmates, you have everything from mental illness, drug addiction, anxiety, health issues. So we have a correctional, corrections organization, I shouldn't say organization, but part of our organization that works within there to care for all of these needs. We have over 2,000 detention officers, yet we're short over 200. So we have pods where we have 200 or so inmates with just 2 detention officers responsible for their safety, which is just, it's extremely unsafe and difficult, and we're trying to bring that back into a safe place and really get a focus where they're viewed as the true professionals that they are, because they do tremendous work.
Wow. Here's a great question. And by the way, if you've got a question for Sheriff Penzone, you can go to crowdmics.online/MML, and it'll hook you right up, and you can send a question like this. Are there uses of technology that help with law enforcement that weren't available a few years ago?
Absolutely. We see a constant growth. You know, some folks may be familiar with crime stats. We always want to allocate our resources to the greatest need without depleting another area just because it's a safer community. But as we target our additional resources, as I spoke about fugitives, or if we have certain spikes in crimes, we want to make sure that statistically we can do an evaluation. A big part of what we do really is the human element, the talent of men and women. But statistics and technology help us respond more quickly to areas, have a better understanding of maybe the landscape that we're engaging in. It gives us a chance to come into private industries such as this and map out surfaces, so that if you had a worst case scenario and we had to respond, we're not learning on the fly about your ground, maybe the architecture or the groundscape of this area. We have a better understanding of it. So I always taught there's a couple of factors that are critical. You know, time, distance, and barriers. The more time that we have in advance to know that something's going to occur, the better prepared we can be as citizens or as law enforcement. The greater distance we can get from that threat, the safer we are, and then whatever barriers we can utilize for our safety, if those two things diminish, are critical. So with technology, we can do a better job of planning out and being strategic as much as we're tactical in those efforts.
Here's a question that I know has gotten a lot of airtime. I understand that you're taking the tents down. Have you thought about utilizing the space for homelessness to help get them off the streets?
The tents are actually down, and just to be clear, we have 2 sections in the tents. One is for those that are convicted and just serving their time. The other section is for work furlough. So everyone that was on one side of that space, which was about 400 inmates, they have all been relocated without any challenges inside the hardened walls. And those tents, actually yesterday, I think, or the day before, were completely taken to the ground. The other half were still in process, which is work furlough, and it's a more challenging dynamic because these men and women go to work every day, so we have to transition them in and out of the jail system. But I have considered many, many factors relative to how we can use that space for the best interest of the community. One that is really rising to the top right now, we have a MASH unit. We have anywhere at any given time between 80 to 200 dogs. These are dogs that are evidentiary in nature oftentimes because we've taken them from hoarding situations or from puppy mills, abuse, other factors. Some are just different circumstances, but we house them in our oldest jail. So if you can imagine an old jail cell, which is a sliding, bars, and the dogs are in there spinning because they don't get any kind of social activity. We are not animal experts, but we have a responsibility to care for the animal community, especially when it comes to violence. If we're going to do that, we need to count on experts and do it the right way. So that space where the tents are, we're looking right now at some private funding to possibly create a MASH unit out there with sophisticated kennels in a park where our inmates will be responsible for the day in, day out care to learn compassion and responsibility and other factors that I think can be a great contributor.
That'd be great.
But I don't want to take away from the issue of homelessness because that is something that personally and professionally I care deeply about. There for the grace of God go I. If I were in that situation, I want to know that someone's going to at least help me up, not necessarily carry me. So we need to be more invested in helping those who are in need.
That's great. I don't know if you got, I sent you an email. My business idea for us.
I actually blocked your emails, but if you want to, I have a security team back here. If you want to send something through them, we could probably get to that.
Send the eagle now. I thought we could run with the tents until you took them down, bed and breakfast. That would have been awesome.
I have gotten many suggestions. All have been given some consideration.
Think of all the famous people that stayed there. The Charles Barkley wing.
Yes, yes.
The Mark Grace, we had a bunch of
them all. I have to say this, though. I greatly appreciate this because as the sheriff, we deal with a lot of issues in all of law enforcement. And oftentimes you'll hear where we stand on positions through the media, and I think that they do a great job, but it's challenging times. And there are times when things are, whether, I don't believe intentionally, but just misrepresented or not accurate or taken in a soundbite. So when I have this opportunity to speak directly to folks and answer questions, it helps me tremendously because I can learn about what your concerns are, and you can better understand why we're making decisions, and by learning from you, I can take that into consideration when I make a decision. But to SRP and to the city of Mesa for sponsoring this, I'm very grateful.
Oh, great. Well, we're really excited that you're here. So thanks for, I know how busy you are, so thanks for that. Here's another question. How does Mesa privatizing their jail affect MCSO? Does that affect anything?
It does, but I think it affects on a greater scale because when we talk about MCSO, we're not an institution, per se we are, but we are the county. We are the county. So when you have all these partners invested in the jail system, where ours is not a for-profit jail, our job is to try to be as efficient as possible to make sure that there's never any influence of incarcerating someone for profit. But when you take one of the cogs out of the wheel, what happens? The other partners then become more responsible for the costs or oversight of that. When it comes to, just to put in perspective, when felons are booked into our jail, because we are the county, those costs are not absorbed by the municipality who arrested them. We absorb those costs as a county. So ultimately we still do, but I'm saying that the city of Mesa or others don't. When a municipality arrests someone for a misdemeanor and they're brought to our jail, then there is a daily billing for that cost because it is a crime that was committed within your own particular community. So in the big spectrum of inmates, we have some that come in and they come in at a very little cost because they're in for 12, 24, whatever it may be hours, no health issues, no other factors, and the expenses are modest. We have other detainees where the expenses are considerable because they have all these other challenges, so the resources that we have to commit to them come at a high cost. So what we try to do is have a balance where all those factors are taken into account, and then you find this price point, for lack of a better description, that goes across the board. So we're not doing something a la carte. When you take, in this case, and I'm not being critical of the decision that was made here in Mesa, I just want you to understand the factors. When you take misdemeanor cases out of our system that maybe are the ones that come at the least cost, there's going to be a variable that we have to address because then we're going to be increasing costs in other areas. So what ends up affecting is Phoenix or Scottsdale or Glendale or others who choose to stay in the system who may be adversely impacted. It's my responsibility 100% to do everything I can to ensure we're efficient. So the efficiencies translate to savings for our community when it comes to detaining inmates. I don't think it should cost more to detain an inmate than it does to educate a young adult. I think that's insane. But it's going to take time for me to get my arms around this. As I said, 250 lawsuits, 2 federal court orders that have cost us $60 million in the last 4 years. All these outside variables have impacted our ability to run the organization. We have to get our arms around that, and my concern is only that we're in it together and you hold me accountable to those issues. The accountability should have been going on a long time ago, I'm going to be quite frank with you. Those things that were not addressed early on, we're all paying the price for now. So I respect the decision, and if there are things that occur that we can learn from because of that transition, ultimately we should be more competitive. But for-profit prisons is not something I'm comfortable with.
You mentioned when it comes to drugs, the opioid epidemic. Is there an epidemic in crimes? Is there one kind of crime you're seeing more and more of?
I think the growing area is technology. You know, we spoke about the benefits for us, but for every benefit, there's a detriment. So the ability to access our personal information or to abuse, you know, our credit lines and things of that nature are going to continue to increase because we have criminals who are out there in front, and we're always chasing to learn what their next tactic may be. So technology is a great concern, and we've seen not only domestically but internationally the ability to infiltrate, take our information, to possibly use it against us. So I think we're going to have to continue to make advancements in that area. But ultimately, traditional crime and violence are always going to be the kind of those roots in our community, and I'm a firm believer that drug abuse and addiction is a great contributor to the volume of crime.
Yeah, absolutely. As you look forward, what would you like for the outlook for the Valley, for your under the sheriff's purview to look like? What do you see? What are your goals?
Well, I see it on a more global scale. You know, it disheartens me when I turn the TV on and we see an incident anywhere in the nation where an officer or a deputy has acted in a manner that's unacceptable, when they've been abusive in any way, because that does not truly reflect the majority of the good work that's done. At the same time, it is unacceptable and it has to be addressed. And the more direct we are in owning those responsibilities and to addressing it and to giving confidence to our community we serve, to trust in our decision making, the more we can bring everybody back together. I'm the father of 2 boys. I have a 30-year-old and a 24-year-old. I'm very thankful that they've gotten through this stage of their life, you know, drug-free with their education and everything else. But I recognize how trying those times are. I would love to see on a global scale we get back to the place where law enforcement is an industry that has earned respect, that no matter what walk of life you come from, that when a young man or woman walks up, they look at a police officer deputy and they see them as, you know, for lack of a better description, a hero. I was just at a school a few weeks ago, and they had career day, and it was a grade school. So these little ones, you know, parading through, and they were asked to dress up as whatever they want to be when they grew up. And they had about 20 children, aside from the hundreds in the audience, that came through and said, I want to be a comedian. That may not have happened. It may or may not. I don't know. But I can tell you this, what I did not see from one single young adult was, I want to be a police officer. And that broke my heart because it is a great profession of sacrifice. And I want to see the day again where the confidence and trust is there because we've earned it and because you know who we are and we have these engagements as opposed to the negative ones more often where we don't know that person or their life or anything else. We just saw what they did wrong, and that judgment becomes industry-wide as opposed to an individual act.
What can we as individuals and as a community do to help, to make the Valley a better place to live?
I think it's more of this. You know, we just had our first, and we didn't create the wheel, but our first, well, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's a police academy for a community. You know, we had our first academy where we brought folks in and you know, since under my tenure, and we need to have more engagements like this where we get to know each other as people. I better understand your needs or concerns. I can answer to those, and if we're off track, we can make proper adjustments. At the same time, we have to get away from this divisiveness, whether it's political, whether it's racial, whether it's religious. It doesn't matter to me. If there's a tragedy, everyone in this room will come together to overcome that. Yet when we're day in, day out life, we find reasons to divide ourselves and put ourselves in little packs. I have a respect for everyone's individuality and what your beliefs are. But I'm a great believer that if what you're doing doesn't come from a place of love and kindness, it's the opposite, then the issue is more your own than ours, and we need to overcome that. So we had a lot of work to do, but we have to be one community that has a law enforcement service as opposed to a community that sees the division that happens to be law enforcement.
Great. Well, I know that okay, this is a little, I'm throwing you a curveball here. I know one of your favorite movies of all time is Rocky.
Well, that is true, but only by marriage, because my wife has this attraction to Rocky, not Sylvester Stallone, so through her, I've been forced to love Rocky also. Happy wife, happy life, right?
Exactly. Well, our mutual friend Steve said, I got to hit you with a trivia question.
And Steve, yes, mutual friend of my wife, know every line from every Rocky movie before it happens. I'm not that versed, but I'll do my best.
Okay, you remember Mr. T's character in Rocky? Remember, what was his name?
Clubber Lang.
Clubber Lang. Clubber was his nickname. What was his real first name? They never said it, but it was on a poster. And as it was, do you remember Clubber Lang's?
Mr. Lang.
Mr. Lang.
Yes, was his first name. No idea.
That's how you get to be the sheriff right there.
But let me say this, in my office, and this was one of the coolest things, when I retired from the Phoenix Police Department, the Silent Witness Board gave me a Rocky full movie poster with the signatures of everyone on the cast and crew. Yeah.
They didn't.
And it hangs in my office. So if you want to come by and see it, you're welcome to.
It wasn't really them that signed it.
You'll have to go through security.
That's awesome. And by the way, it was James Clubber Lang.
See, my wife would have known that. She's watching right now. She's very disappointed in me.
Well, we appreciate you. I know how busy you were, and your schedule was such that we're just fortunate you were able to swing by for a little while. Thanks so much for undertaking a huge career change. You didn't have to do this. You're retired, you're cushy, you're doing a couple of golf tournaments.
Cushy was an understatement. Life was, life was completely different.
And now you're doing this, so thanks. I think you're gonna make the Valley even a better place to live. If you got any questions, if these folks have any questions or comments, how do they get a hold of you? Is there a...
I can stick around for a little bit in the back.
Okay, but I mean, is there a website or something tomorrow?
Absolutely, mcso.gov.org. That's something.
Yeah.
Catch me in the back of the room. I'm happy to figure out what it is and get it to you.
Well, folks, and sorry to throw you the curveball question.
Okay.
How about a big round of applause for Sheriff Paul Penzone? Thanks, man. Clubber Lang. Well, I forgot one thing. Paul, we noticed that you came in today in a dirty vehicle. We'd like to fix that. One of our favorite sponsors is Cobblestone Auto Spa. They would like to give you a $100 gift card to have a vehicle detailed. Give it to your wife if you want to.
Actually, what I'm going to do with this is although my vehicle is not marked, it does have lights, so I'm going to find a car going down the road that's dirty, and I'm going to, who's committed an infraction, and instead of a ticket, I'll pass this on to them.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
Mr. Paul Penzone.